Hey, this is Driver88. If you're like me, you probably have a number of automotive experiences completely seared into your mind as a kid, which affected your automotive taste for the rest of your life. And myself, I was lucky enough to sit in the back of a couple of large Mercedes sedans in the 90s that were owned by my grandfather. Classically, like many immigrants here, he worked incredibly hard and decades later enjoyed a 350 SEL in a light blue color and a burgundy 300E. Both cars incredibly cool, and I've always since then had a soft spot for large Benzes. However, I've never driven a single S-Class, let alone an S-Class AMG. So I've enlisted the help of my friends, David and the team at Lorbek Luxury Cars, to get behind the wheel of an S63. This one is a W222. I think one of the best looking S-Classes of its 50 years of history. And it's the S63. Back in 2014, this car cost over 400,000 Australian dollars, all 577 horsepower worth. I'm looking to see if this thing is worth 75% less than what it was originally purchased for and how it drives. So we're gonna go down there now. I'm really looking forward to this. What do you guys think about the looks? Personally, as I've said, I think this is quite a beautiful, large, big Benz. Now, the thing that I really like about it is, if you've noticed, a lot of modern Mercedes these days all pretty much look the same, from the A-Class sedan all the way to the multiple models of the new S-Class sedan. They all kind of look the same shape, the same front. What I like about the 222 is the front slats on the front of the car, which hark back to, say, the 70s of the 350 SEL that my grandfather used to drive, and I used to sit in the back of, just like this. Of course, I've got no one to chauffeur me anymore, but regardless, I love the looks of this thing. So welcome to the interior of the W222 S63 AMG, the classic round steering wheel of an S-Class. We've got Burmeister sound system mixed with a navy blue leather, wrap around timber finish. It's just so nice in here. As I said, $400,000 worth of car for now 100K. We have, I think, one of the best S-Classes in terms of aesthetics since the beginning of the brand. We've got a little bit of Alcantara here. This car has really held up quite well for 100,000 kilometers on the interior. Of course, you've got your IWC mechanical clock in the middle here, and let's just jump in the back because that is where people are probably going to spend most of their time in the S-Class. I'm not a big fan of timber in cars because usually it just clashes with the rest, but the mixture of aluminium trims on some of these surfaces with the timber and the leather suits really well. Some of these pieces feel a little bit plasticky, but everything else, the leather, feels fantastic. I could definitely be chauffeured around in this every day. And what I love about this interior is Mercedes had a right thing going 10 years ago. They started with the primary and secondary landscape screens, which now every single brand from BMW to Ford have two landscape screens because you can look at your primary and secondary information and still see ahead of you on the road. Now they've added all these screens here. Instead of getting sort of some nice timber finish and a clock, we have just screens, and more plastic everywhere. I think they had the right idea with this sort of setup. Otherwise, if you want to catch up on your Greek news, yeah, you can watch that too. So performance, we have a 577 horsepower, twin turbo 5.5 litre V8. And for this model, just for a few years, all of the power is sent to the rear wheels. So we've got 285 rears, which get us to 0 to 100 in 4.4 seconds. You would definitely want warm rear tires, I think, to achieve that. That's not really what this car is about, but then again, if you do want to smoke them up, why not? It makes the limousine that much more entertaining. This 5.5 litre is mated to a 7-speed auto, which I haven't been a big fan of with Mercedes of this sort of era, but I'll reserve my judgment until we take it for a drive, which we're going to do right now. My first drive in an S-Class, whisper quiet, but you can just tell that there's a nice V8 rumble that has awakened in this lovely large sedan. Now, I have to keep reminding myself once I'm driving this thing that I'm sitting in a $400,000 plus Uber sedan and just getting off the mark. So quiet, so sensuously silky in its power delivery, and I do like this steering wheel. It's Alcantara, which kind of doesn't make sense in an S-Class, but there's a really nice combination of softness, but you also know that you have 900 Newton meters behind your foot at all times from barely over idle speed. Look, I don't know what sort of person wants to buy this, but for 100 grand, I have sat in so many cars recently between the $100,000 to $150,000 mark, and none of them feel remotely as nice as this to experience. Now, I'm not sure whether I look like some sort of mafia member or just a Greek limo driver, which I'm assuming was the person who put 100,000 kilometers on this car. And what's really cool is it is an AMG, so even though it is an S-Class, I have these sport seats, and whenever I turn corners, the side bolstering is hugging me to the left and to the right as if I'm in some sort of active sports car. It's really quite a beautiful day to take an S63 out for a drive. And really, inside here, you wouldn't know that it's 10 years old at all. I much prefer this interior than the new car, which is, it has this hyper screen thing, which to me just means more plastic and LED rather than nice finishing touches and timber and aluminium. All right, so after this car was produced for a few years, they brought it out in an all-wheel drive only mode, so a 4MATIC only model, and this one is rear-wheel drive. So let's see how she goes when I put the power down. Okay, the rears are very easy to let loose, especially when it's cold. Look, if you're the sort of person that wants to maybe do some drifting on the weekends and then drive your drive your boss around, or maybe a family member around during the week, this could be the car for you. I don't know who else who else wants this thing? But I think if I was going to be a Murphy hitman in a future life, I'd definitely have to pick one of these. For 100 grand Australian, why not? I don't know how much it's going to cost to service, but one thing about servicing these cars is you don't have the enormous twin turbo 6-litre V12, which, let's be honest, is an incredibly cool engine, but it's going to cost a fair bit less, I think, to service this car than the V12. If you're spending $100,000 at least, you're going to have to put a decent amount of budget for your running costs of fuel, rear tyres, and of course servicing. I could imagine that front rotors on these would be quite expensive. One thing that I am missing, even though the speedo is right there, is a heads-up display. I mean, I guess in 2014, I don't know if that was an option, but given the sort of car that this is, a heads-up display would be good. And I've noticed that the turning circle of this vehicle, which is 5.1 meters long, is really, really decent. You can get around corners quite easily. And this car has what's called the Magic Ride control, I believe. So when you're going, say, 250 kilometers plus on the Autobahn, the car has a stability control to stop the car from being moved around by the wind, which is just uber cool. Unfortunately, here in Australia, you can only go 110 kilometers per hour maximum. One thing I will say is that the level of adjustability with this car, you can adjust absolutely everything, and I tell you, it would take you forever to go through every single option. Even for 2014, there's just so many different things that you can change, and you could get lost in it. It doesn't interest me that much, but you could totally get lost in the amount of options this car has. So how does the car do with spirited driving? Well, I'm not sure the sort of customer that's wanting to buy this thing is going to be doing too many spirited drives, but geez, I tell you, I mean, it doesn't feel as much of a barge as you'd think. The turning circle's so good. I think this car could potentially be a lot more fun than you could ever imagine. Let's be honest, I mean, it is an AMG. After all, it's not an S400. Start. At least I can press the stop start button and get rid of that. The 7-speed gearbox is arguably a little bit of a letdown, but we do have nice aluminium paddles. I couldn't imagine that the Greek limo driver who owned this for however many years spent too much time playing with the paddle shifts in this. The torque from second gear and third gear, it's so good. And the car just perfectly is so flat. It's so satisfying to drive because I'm judging it for what it is, a nice, strong limousine from Mercedes. Not as a sports car, obviously. So my very first drive of an S-Class, none other than an S63 AMG, and I tell you, I was really impressed with it. I have no idea who this car is for in this used state, but I can tell you that for 100 grand, and it's an absolute bargain considering the quality and the performance and the size. My love for big Benzes has not waned now after driving this thing. I think potentially a future classic. Love the W222. Thanks for watching. This is Driver 88.